If someone asked me, what moment shattered 33 years of striving to be the reliable daughter in an instant? I wouldn't talk about fiery arguments or some dramatic shock. No, it was just a text message, 9 words, that appeared on my phone screen on a chilly November morning in San Francisco. I'm Olivia Carter, 33 years old, currently vice president of product at a tech company. People look at my resume and nod. This girl's successful, capable, nothing to worry about. But in my family, that independence became the perfect excuse for them to abandon me. For years, I was labeled low maintenance. What does that mean? It means when I needed attention, I didn't get it. When I achieved something, it was immediately overshadowed. Meanwhile, Ethan, my brother 5 years younger, was always the center of attention. He needed more. Money for school, encouragement, our parents' constant presence. And naturally, our parents poured all their favor into him. Me? I was expected to manage on my own, to stand tall. It sounds noble, but in reality, it just meant I was overlooked, treated like a shadow. And that morning, it was acknowledged openly. I was sitting in a meeting room on the 21st floor, preparing for a strategic plan presentation. My phone buzzed with the familiar ringtone, the one reserved for my mother, Margaret. I smiled briefly. I imagined she'd ask about my flight or remind me, "Bring a jacket, it's cold in Boston." Then the message appeared. "This Thanksgiving is just with Ethan's family. Don't come, we need space." 9 words, short, cold. A blunt knife slicing through my last illusion. I read it 3, 4 times. Maybe she sent it by mistake? Maybe a joke? But no. My mother never misspoke, and she had no sense of humor. This was deliberate. They didn't need me. At first I was numb. Then a pain spread through my chest, and finally, strangely, I laughed. A bitter, hoarse laugh. After 33 years of showing up for every occasion, my reward was a one-way ticket out of the family dinner. I wanted to react. I wanted to type a long message, listing every sacrifice. Who paid for Ethan's daughter's tutoring? Who canceled a work trip to make it to last year's Thanksgiving? Who was always there when the family needed something? I wanted to scream, "What about me?" But then I stopped. I remembered what my therapist once said. "Olivia, you can't change their behavior. You can only choose how you respond." So I deleted everything, and instead I typed one word. Enjoy. One word. Short, decisive, emotionless. It gave them no room to argue, no way to deny, no chance to blame my sensitivity. I hit send, placed the phone face down on the table, and sat still. From that moment, memories flooded back. I remembered my graduation, when they left early to tend to Ethan. I remembered my first promotion party turning into a planning session for my brother's wedding. I remembered last year when I brought my boyfriend home, only to be seated at the kids' table while Ethan's in-laws took center stage. All those times I convinced myself, it's fine, I'm too sensitive, as long as they love me, it's enough. But that morning's message was undeniable. We need space. Space from whom? From me. That afternoon, I sat in the meeting room, deaf to everything. Colleagues discussed budgets, charts slid across the screen, but my mind spun around one question. If they don't need me for Thanksgiving, the most important family gathering, when do they need me? After work, I stepped onto Market Street. Christmas lights were already up. Cheerful music spilled from shops. People rushed around preparing for reunions. I watched them, feeling like an outsider. Back at my small marina apartment, I stood on the balcony overlooking San Francisco Bay, the cold wind stinging my face. Suddenly, a thought sparked. Maybe I don't need to keep fighting for a seat at their table. Maybe it's time to build my own. That thought surprised me. It felt rebellious, dangerous, but also liberating. After years of striving to be the reliable daughter, only to receive 9 cold words, maybe it was time to rewrite my life's script. I poured a glass of wine, sat watching the city's twinkling lights. The message still stung, but it also felt like a door opening. If they didn't need me, I had the right to need myself. Have you ever felt pushed aside by your own family? When your presence feels like a burden? If so, comment below. You'll understand the dizzying mix of shock and clarity I just experienced. They say childhood memories are like boxes tucked into a closet. You try to forget them by shutting them tight. But one light touch, and the lid pops open, everything spilling out as if it never left. That "don't come for Thanksgiving" message was that touch. It pulled me back to Boston, where my childhood was tied to the feeling of fending for myself while Ethan was rolled out the red carpet. I grew up in a classic two-story house, red brick, in a quiet Boston suburb. On winter mornings, I'd bundle up in a sweater, make my own sandwich, and trudge to the school bus stop. Ethan? My mother drove him to school, worried her baby boy would catch a cold. When I complained, my father just shrugged. "You're strong, Olivia, you can handle it." That phrase, dressed up as praise, was really permission to ignore me. I vividly remember Ethan's 16th birthday. My parents led him to the backyard, where a shiny new car waited, a red bow tied to the rearview mirror. Ethan whooped, hugging them, while I stood at the doorstep, forcing a smile. Me? I worked at a coffee shop for 2 years, saving every penny to buy a beat-up used car from a friend. My mother just said, "Olivia, you're so capable, buying your own car. How proud you must be." Proud? It sounded like a polite way of saying, "You don't need us." Then there was college. I juggled 3 jobs: kitchen assistant, tutor, library clerk. I applied for scholarships, fought for every grant to cover tuition. Ethan? My parents paid his full ride and sent monthly allowances. When I pointed out the disparity, my mother patted my head like I was still a child. "You're smart, independent, you can manage. Ethan needs more." Strange. I never understood why needing more meant getting more. Even moments that should have been mine had their spotlight stolen. At my college graduation with honors, my parents attended, snapped a few photos, then rushed off to help Ethan move into his new apartment. I stood there in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, watching them walk away. My joy deflated like a punctured balloon. When I got my first promotion at 25, I excitedly invited the family to dinner, thinking, this is when they'll be proud. But the conversation revolved around Ethan's wedding plans. My parents laughed, discussed flowers, menus, guest lists. I sat there, sipping water, listening, like an unimportant guest. The peak was a Thanksgiving a few years ago. I brought expensive bottles of wine, carefully chosen to pair with the meal. My mother tucked them away, unopened, and served cheap wine because Ethan's in-laws prefer it. That night, I shared news of a major project I'd closed. The table fell silent for a few seconds before my mother smiled thinly. "Great job, Olivia, but let's not make others feel bad. Not everyone's as lucky in their career." That comment felt like a slap. In a moment meant for recognition, I was told to shrink myself so others wouldn't feel inferior. Naturally, the conversation shifted to Ethan's upcoming job change. Those moments repeated like the background music of our family. Ethan at the center, me in the shadows. I learned to hide my hurt, to smile, to tell myself, they still love me. I'm just different. But the truth? I was made invisible. I showed up for every occasion, but I was never truly seen. I was the extra chair at the feast, always there but no one cared. Once I confided in Aunt Eleanor, my mother's sister, a psychology professor. She listened and said, "Olivia, the problem isn't that they don't love you. They see you as they want to, the capable daughter who needs no one. And believing that, they allow themselves to overlook you." It made sense, but when you're a 16-year-old kid or a 23-year-old grinding through multiple jobs, that logic doesn't ease the pain. Looking back, it's bitter. I spent my childhood and youth playing a supporting role in my family's movie. I wondered, did I waste years trying to earn a glance from parents who never meant to give it? That's why, when that message came, I wasn't shocked. Hurt, yes. But oddly, it felt familiar. My whole life had been preparation for this moment, being openly excluded, with the exact words they'd been silently conveying for decades. And in that pain, I began to understand, if I kept waiting, I'd always be a shadow. They say when one door closes, another opens. For me, that cold message from my mother was a door slamming shut. But what they didn't know was that behind me, another door had been cracked open for a while, just waiting for me to find the courage to step through. That door was Sunset Vineyard House, a 40-acre farmhouse in Napa Valley I'd signed the contract for just a month earlier. I still remember my first morning there. The gravel road to the estate stretched long, lined with whispering olive trees. In the distance, vineyards spread like an endless green quilt, rolling toward misty purple hills. Late autumn sunlight bathed the grapevines, making the ripe clusters glisten like jewels. I stopped the car, stepped out, and a wave of earthy scent mixed with the sweetness of ripe fruit hit me. In that moment, I knew I'd found my place. The main house of Sunset Vineyard House is a wood and stone farmhouse from the late 19th century. Thick walls, brown-tiled roof, large windows opening to the valley. But what struck me most was the kitchen. Long, wood-paneled, with a rustic dining table that could seat 15. On the wall, an old cast-iron oven still worked, exuding a strange warmth. I imagined winter evenings, the room glowing with fire, the aroma of wine and fresh bread filling the air. Something in the kitchen made me laugh. A row of gleaming copper pots hung on a rack. My mother would surely walk in, frown, and say, "Too heavy, too impractical." But to me, they symbolized resilience, something I'd learned while my family continually overlooked me. I wandered to the back, where a wooden porch overlooked the vineyard. Sipping a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon made right there, I felt, for the first time, a space truly mine. No more squeezing into a corner at a table where I was told to sit for now. No more being interrupted while sharing my successes. Here, I was the center, not by declaration, but by the vast silence embracing me. This house wasn't just property. It was a symbol of self-ownership. I bought it with my own labor, years grinding in tech, sleepless nights poring over hundreds of pages of product reports. If Ethan got a car for his 16th birthday, this was the gift I gave myself at 33. And in that piece, a thought sparked. Why wait to be invited home for Thanksgiving? If they wanted space, I'd create my own. I pictured that long kitchen filled with people, the table draped in white, red wine flowing, laughter mingling with the scent of roasted turkey and herbs from the back garden. But unlike Thanksgiving at my parents', where everyone sat like they were on a minefield, wary of bruising someone's fragile ego, here, there'd only be sincerity. I wanted to invite those who truly saw me. Aunt Eleanor, cousins Jordan and Sophia, my closest friends. It would be the stage for a new tradition. No more playing the easy daughter. This would be a place where people came together, not to compare or boast, but to share kindness and joy. A tiny sarcastic voice in my head sneered. Bet Mom would be shocked to know I'm not crying over being excluded from her table, but instead, I'm hosting a feast of my own, without her in charge. The thought made me smile, a mischievous grin with a hint of sweet revenge. That evening, in Sunset Vineyard House's living room, golden light spilling across the wooden ceiling, I opened my notebook and wrote 2 words in big letters. Thanksgiving, Napa. Below, I listed guests. The excitement felt like planning a rebellion, but one built on kindness. I knew it wouldn't be easy. My family would see it as betrayal. But for the first time, instead of fearing their judgment, I felt a new energy, a desire to create something truly mine. Isn't it ironic? By pushing me out, my family gave me the chance to step into a bigger world, one where I could build my own traditions, with this Napa house as the symbol. But trust me, this is just the beginning. The first invitations, unexpected reactions, and challenges lie ahead. If you find this story compelling, comment why. If not, feel free to leave N. I want to know if anyone stood at a crossroads like mine, between a family that takes and a dream you build yourself. There's a moment in life when you realize that staying on the old path will never bring peace. For me, that moment came right after the "Don't come for Thanksgiving" message. I sat for hours in my San Francisco apartment, a bottle of red wine open but untouched. My mind swirled with questions. Why me? Why could they so easily cast me aside? Then, in that despair, I recalled my therapist's words, Dr. Harris, whom I've mentioned in previous videos on this channel, if you're curious to learn more about my healing journey. He once said, "Olivia, you can't control them. You can only control how you respond." At the time, I nodded, but didn't fully grasp it. That night, in my quiet apartment, his words echoed so clearly, it gave me chills. If I couldn't control my parents, who always favored Ethan and saw me as invisible, then at least I could choose my response. Not with anger, not with blame, but with action. So, a bold idea formed. I'd host my own Thanksgiving, not in my cramped marina apartment, but at Sunset Vineyard House, the Napa home I bought, which I detailed in Chapter 3. Imagine a reunion feast amid golden vineyards, under an old wooden roof, a long table lit by candles and laughter, a Thanksgiving free of judgment, free of bitter comparisons, just the presence of those who truly valued me. The thought made me laugh at first, like a joke or a wild plan. But the more I thought, the faster my heart raced, not from fear but from excitement. Maybe for the first time, I wouldn't wait for an invitation. I'd be the one sending them. But who to invite? The first person who came to mind was Aunt Eleanor, my mother's sister. If you've watched my earlier videos, you know she's the only relative who ever told me straight, "You're not invisible, Olivia. They just refuse to see." A psychology professor, single, living in Cambridge, she always supported me, listened, and never saw my success as a threat. If anyone would stand by me, it was her. Next were my cousins, Jordan and Sophia. Jordan's a pediatrician in Chicago, Sophia an architect in Seattle. We grew up together, sharing summers at our grandparents' lake house. If you want more on that bond, check out my video, The Last Summer by the Lake. They were the only ones who called to congratulate me on my promotion while the family was busy with Ethan's wedding. I knew they'd come if I asked. The list grew. Uncle David and Aunt Patricia with their daughters Madison and Leah, who often complained about my mother's control at family gatherings. Then Uncle Michael and his husband James, a lively couple who never missed a chance to lighten the mood. As I wrote their names in my notebook, I realized I wasn't the only one stifled by my parents' dominance. If I had the courage to host a new table, others might be waiting for an invitation to break free. I sat a moment longer, staring at the list. Yes, this plan would anger my parents. Yes, they'd call it betrayal. But if I kept fearing their reaction, I'd never grow. That night, I called Aunt Eleanor. My heart pounded as the phone rang. When she answered, her warm voice came through. "Olivia, what's wrong? You sound off." I took a deep breath and told her everything, from the "don't come" message to my plan for a Napa Thanksgiving. She was silent for a long moment, then let out a short laugh, not mocking, but joyful. "Olivia, you're finally choosing yourself over enduring. I'll be there, and I'm proud of you." Her words choked me up. For years, I just needed someone to say I was enough. And finally, I heard it, from someone who always saw me. I called Jordan, Sophia, then my aunts and uncles. Their reactions were the same: shock, excitement, eager agreement. Sophia even shouted over the phone, "Thanksgiving in Napa instead of hearing Aunt Margaret complain about the turkey? I'm booking my ticket now." Each yes was a piece of a new puzzle, a picture of a Thanksgiving not centered on my parents but on my choices. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, heart still racing. I'd done something the Olivia of last year, or even last month, wouldn't have dared dream of. I sent the first invitations, not to seek permission, but to assert myself. That evening, stepping onto Napa's wooden porch, I looked up at the starry sky. For the first time in years, I felt light, because I finally understood. Strength isn't in changing others, but in daring to choose a different path. They say when your own family turns away, you discover another truth, that you can build a chosen family. I never believed it until I started making those calls, finding hands reaching out when I thought I stood alone. After successful calls with Aunt Eleanor, Jordan, and Sophia, I sat at Napa's long dining table, golden light from the overhead lamp spilling onto my notebook where I wrote the list. On the first page, I titled it, Allies. I knew if this was just a meal, it wouldn't mean much. But with enough people who truly saw me, warm enough to fill the void my family left, it would become a statement. The next person I called was Aunt Ruth, my mother's youngest sister, 60, a sociology professor in New York. If you've seen my previous videos, you know I've talked about her a lot. A woman who never married, devoted her life to studying family structures, yet understood me better than anyone in the family. When the call connected, her voice was warm but tired from grading papers. "Olivia, something up? You rarely call me at night." I swallowed, then spilled everything. From Mom's "don't come" message to my Napa Thanksgiving plan. She was silent for a while, then sighed softly. You know, Olivia, sometimes the family you're born into is the first to deny who you really are. If you're brave enough to create a new space, I'll be there. Not just as your aunt, but as someone who gets it. Her words brought tears, part hurt, part relief. I wasn't alone anymore. Next, I called Alex, my cousin on my dad's side, a cardiologist in Boston. Always busy, he never forgot to text congratulations for my career milestones. When I shared the plan, he burst out laughing. God, Olivia, you're reminding me of the dozens of times I wanted to walk out of Uncle Robert's dinners. I'm in, and I'll bring a bottle of Bordeaux to compete with your Napa wine. His swift "I'm in" lightened my heart. No convincing, no explaining, just one sentence was enough. Then I dialed Julia, a distant cousin, an architect in Portland. Julia's always been my role model, a woman who dared to live differently, divorced in her early 30s from a stifling marriage, then built her own design firm. When I told her about Napa, she laughed brightly. You know, I just designed a dining room for a client, exactly like your farmhouse. I have to come see your masterpiece in person. Save me a seat and brace yourself. I'll spend hours analyzing every detail of that house. I couldn't help but laugh, warmth spreading inside. Julia wasn't just coming to eat. She was coming to see me, to validate my choice. Last on that night's list were Uncle Daniel and Aunt Linda, a couple the family often sidelined for avoiding loud gatherings. Really, they just wanted to escape my mother's control. I called, and when I explained, Daniel chuckled dryly. Olivia, you've just freed us from a stressful holiday season. Napa, instead of hearing them talk about Ethan, we're there, and we'll bring our family's creamed pumpkin. I laughed loudly, a sound that hadn't echoed in a room for a while. In one night, my list of allies grew, each name filling a piece of the emptiness inside me. Hanging up, I sat quietly. Golden light bathed the ancient wooden walls of Sunset Vineyard House, with only the sound of wind rustling the vineyard outside. I realized what moved me wasn't just their agreement to come, but how quickly, decisively, they said yes. No one hesitated. No one asked, "What will your parents think?" They all chose me. In that moment, I felt like the center of something for the first time. Not because I carried everyone's burdens, but because I was me. Then a thought crept in. Maybe this is the real family, built on choice and respect, not just blood. I closed the notebook, but my heart opened to a new horizon. For the first time in years, I looked forward to Thanksgiving, not for the food or the turkey, but because I knew in Napa I'd sit among people who truly saw me. That night, I slept deeply, a rare calm after weeks of stress. I knew I'd laid the foundation for a small family revolution. But I also knew this peace wouldn't last. News of Napa would reach others, and the reactions wouldn't be gentle. Some calls you never expect to receive. And that's why, when they come, your heart skips a beat. I was sitting on Napa's wooden porch, a glass of wine in hand, eyes tracing the swaying vineyard in the evening breeze, when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen froze me. Tom. Tom, Ethan's husband. The quiet, kind man who appeared at family gatherings with a polite smile and eyes that sometimes met mine, as if to say, I know, I see. But beyond those glances, we rarely spoke privately. Yet now, he was calling. I answered, keeping my voice steady. Hey Tom, what's up? On the other end, he lowered his voice, as if afraid someone might hear. Olivia, I hope this call doesn't catch you off guard, but I need to talk, it's important. I set the wine down, leaning back in the chair. A gut feeling stirred. Any important call right now would revolve around one name, Ethan. Sure enough, Tom sighed, then said, I heard you're hosting Thanksgiving in Napa. I paused for a few seconds. So, the news was spreading. I wasn't entirely surprised, just a pang in my chest. I wasn't ready for a confrontation with the other side. Tom continued, Actually, I'm calling because something happened last week. I had an argument with Margaret, your mom. My eyebrows shot up. Arguing with my mother? That was as rare as snow in July. About what? I asked. Tom hesitated, then confessed. About Lily's tuition. Your parents promised to help, but at the last minute they backed out, saying they needed to set boundaries. Ethan was upset, and I didn't know what to do but argue. I felt it was unfair. I closed my eyes. A mix of emotions surged: sympathy for Tom, bitter amusement. For years, I'd endured the prioritize Ethan treatment. Now Tom was tasting that broken promise, and he called it unfair. "You're calling to vent?" I asked, unable to hide a sarcastic edge. Tom paused, then said quickly, "No, I'm calling because I think maybe me, Ethan, and the kids should come to Napa with you." The words hit like a heavy stone. I froze, my ears ringing. "To Napa?" I repeated, making sure I hadn't misheard. "Yes," Tom said, "because I don't want to sit around a fake table in Boston anymore. I know Ethan might not change easily, but the kids are different. I want them to see a different kind of family, the one you're building." I stood, pacing the porch. My mind was a mess. For years, Ethan was the center of every favoritism. I was sidelined while my brother was coddled as the only child that mattered. Now Tom was asking to bring his whole family to the stage I just built. My voice trembled as I spoke. "Tom, do you realize what you're asking? If Ethan walks in here, every old wound will reopen. I risk being overshadowed again, right in the home I built to escape that darkness." Tom went quiet, then he said, soft but firm, "I understand, and I promise it won't happen again. Olivia, I know you've been shortchanged, but if we don't start somewhere, Ethan will never change. Maybe Napa is the chance, not for you to step back, but to set the terms." I stood still. Terms. The word echoed in my mind. All my life, I'd never had terms with my family. Only duties, obligations, responsibilities. For the first time, someone suggested I set the rules. I sat down, taking a deep breath. "Let me think about it," I said. "No promises." Tom exhaled, as if that alone was a glimmer of hope. Before hanging up, he added, "Olivia, whatever you decide, thank you for listening, and for being proof that you can live differently." The call ended, but my heart didn't settle. I looked out at the vineyard, the sun setting, painting the sky purple. In that moment, I felt torn. One side wanted to keep Napa pure, free of past injustices. The other saw a chance to be generous, to see if I could turn an opponent into an ally. I poured another glass of wine, raising it to the sunset. And I wondered, is true strength not in closing the door, but in knowing when to open it with the right terms? Some mornings, you wake with a clear mind. Others, your thoughts tangle like vines after a storm. That morning, I was in the latter. Napa's air was chilly, mist still clinging to the purple vines, but my heart burned with one question: should I invite Ethan? Since Tom's call the night before, my mind had been spinning. I thought I'd escaped the family's vortex, built a safe boundary around this house. But one request, and I felt the door tremble, as if old ghosts were about to rush in. I decided to call my therapist, Dr. Harris, who'd patiently listened to me for 3 years. I needed a calm voice amid my chaotic emotions. "Olivia," her voice steady and even, "what's the worst thing you fear if you invite Ethan?" I sighed, gazing at the sun-drenched vineyard. "I'm afraid it'll all happen again. That I built this space to reclaim my worth, but when Ethan arrives, every eye will turn to him. I'll be the shadow again." She paused, thoughtful. "But in Napa, your parents aren't here. No one to favor him. No one to put him on a pedestal while you stand in the corner. So the real question is, do you believe you're strong enough to hold the center?" Her question pierced my chest. I stayed silent for a long time. For years, I'd waited for my parents to see me. But if they never would, maybe it was time I gave myself permission to be seen. "I think maybe I should try," I said softly. I could picture Dr. Harris's gentle smile over the phone. "Try, but don't let go. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing boundaries. You can invite them, but set clear terms. That's true growth." After the call, I sat for hours at the long kitchen table, writing and rewriting lines. I wasn't used to setting rules with my family, but now, to protect my peace, I had to do what I'd never dared before. I drafted a text to Tom, then deleted it. I tried writing a letter, then crumpled it. Finally, I decided to call. "Tom," I began when he picked up, "I've thought hard. Ethan and his family can come to Napa, but there are conditions." Silence, then Tom replied cautiously, "What conditions, Olivia?" I took a deep breath. "This is my space. Napa isn't another Boston. Here, I won't repeat the old script. If Ethan wants to come, he has to respect that. Understand? Tom spoke slowly, weighing each word. I understand. And I'll talk to Ethan. I promise, Olivia. This time will be different. I hung up, hands still trembling. This decision felt like standing on a rope bridge. One step could plunge me into the abyss. Another could lead to a new shore. But at least this time, I walked with eyes open, not closed like before. That evening, sitting alone on the porch, I felt a shift in my heart. Napa wasn't just a house. It was my first declaration of boundaries, forgiving but not erasing myself. Opening the door, but with the key in my hand, I laughed, bitter yet relieved. Maybe for the first time in my life, Ethan has to follow his big sister's rules. And in that laugh, I realized what scared me wasn't Ethan's presence, but the memory of the old Olivia, the one who always stepped back to make room. But the Olivia in Napa, amid 40 acres of glowing vines, was different now. Some days you live like the world's waiting for a performance, and your house is the stage. I woke that morning with that thought swirling. Sunset Vineyard House had to shine, not just with lights, but with my spirit. Napa's November air was crisp, dew glistening on the purple vines like glass beads. I wrapped myself in a shawl, stepped onto the porch, and breathed in the scent of earth, leaves, and new sun. It felt worlds apart from Boston, where family air was thick like smog, heavy with biased glances. Here the sky was wide, giving me a chance to own my story. After breakfast, I launched into a grand cleaning campaign. Sunset Vineyard House was spacious, 5 bedrooms, a massive wooden kitchen, an attic with windows overlooking the vineyard. But to make it ready for dozens of relatives, I had to tackle every detail. I scrubbed windows, polished the long dining table, checked every bedsheet. At one point, I laughed to myself. Olivia, tech VP, now a full-time hotel staff. But oddly, instead of feeling diminished, I felt free. Each clean sheet, each neatly placed wine glass was a statement. This is my domain. Here, I decide everything. At noon, I drove to the town's farmers market. Napa in festival season buzzed, stalls brimming with red apples, golden pumpkins, crusty fresh bread. I stopped at a vegetable stand where the owner, a silver-haired woman with rosy cheeks from the wind, smiled warmly. You're the one who bought Sunset Vineyard House, right? I nodded, and she handed me a basket of herbs, rosemary, thyme, oregano. For your turkey, she said, trust me, your guests will never forget this scent. One by one, neighbors stopped by, each offering a tip or a gift. One gave homemade cranberry jam, another pointed me to a farm with free-range turkeys. I moved from stall to stall, no longer an outsider like in Boston. Here, people saw me as the new owner of the land, part of their community. That evening, as I arranged herbs in jars in the kitchen, the room glowed with warm light and rich scents. I opened my notebook and wrote the menu. Roasted turkey with Napa herbs, creamy mashed potatoes, pumpkin stewed in red wine, apple tart from the neighbor's orchard, and wine, of course, from the vineyard out back. Looking at the list, I laughed. This wasn't just a meal, it was a declaration that I could create a new tradition, no permission needed, no fear of being sidelined. Yet amid the excitement, waves of worry crept in. I imagined the relatives arriving, then Ethan and his family walking in. Would Napa truly keep me at the center? Could a dazzling table overshadow the past shadows? I bit my lip, then told myself, Olivia, this is your test. If not in Napa, where? As night fell, I stepped outside, gazing at the glowing house. Light from the dining room spilled onto the yard, reflecting off neatly arranged wine bottles. From afar, Sunset Vineyard House looked like a golden fortress, warm amid a sea of purple vines. I stood there a long time, until the feeling clarified. I was no longer a guest in my family. I was the host. I wasn't waiting for acceptance. I was creating a place to accept myself. A soft knock at the gate startled me. It was the morning's neighbor, holding a basket of fresh-baked bread. For your party, she smiled. We're so glad you're here. I took the basket, my heart softening. Maybe a new family didn't need blood ties, just people willing to stand by you. I closed the door, looking at the glowing house one last time before bed, And in that moment, I thought, the stage is set. Now it's time for the actors to arrive. Sunset Vineyard House was ready for the Thanksgiving feast. But like any stage, the drama only begins when the main characters step in. I'd prepared every napkin, every glass, every herb, but I couldn't prepare for one thing: the clashes that would erupt when the family actually arrived. There's a moment in life when a house, mere wood, stone, and glass, becomes a true home, when the first guests arrive. I'd imagined that scene for nights, but nothing compared to the real moment: the wooden gate swinging open, a silver car rolling in, and Aunt Ruth stepping out. Ruth, 60, trim, with the sharp eyes of a veteran sociology professor, was always the one in our family bold enough to say what others only whispered. Beside her was Alex, my cousin, the calm pediatrician from Chicago, and Julia, my architect cousin from Seattle, with her short hair and a blend of artistic and practical flair. I flung the door open, heart racing as if awaiting a judge's verdict instead of greeting relatives. "My God, Olivia!" Julia's voice rang out first, vibrant. "This house, it's like it stepped out of a design magazine." Alex just grinned, shaking his head. "I can't believe the girl who juggled 3 jobs to pay tuition is now standing in front of her own vineyard estate. So proud." Ruth didn't speak right away. She stood still, taking in the house, the vineyard beyond, then turned to me, her eyes warm in a rare way. "Olivia, you've created a space where people can breathe. That's worth more than any career achievement." My nose stung. Maybe for 33 years, I'd just been waiting for a simple acknowledgement like that, and it came from Ruth, not my parents. We quickly brought in their luggage. Sunset Vineyard House came alive. Julia roamed, pointing at details. "The ceilings are gorgeous, the natural light's perfect. Olivia, you've got to let me sketch this." Alex opened his suitcase, pulling out a bottle of Chicago wine. Not Napa level, but symbolic. Ruth, after inspecting the kitchen, rolled up her sleeves without a word and asked, "Got a task list? Let's get started." And so, the house buzzed with preparation. Julia decorated the table, linens, scented candles, dried flowers from the market. Alex chopped vegetables, joking about hospital stories, making me laugh until I cried. Ruth took charge like a seasoned general, assigning tasks, checking spices with military precision. I stood in the kitchen, kneading dough for apple tart, watching the scene, and thought of Thanksgivings at my parents' in Boston. The air there was always tense, my mother running around like everyone was judging her hosting, my father glued to the TV, occasionally barking "who sits where" like a corporate meeting. Anyone laughing too loud got a warning, and while food was plentiful, intimacy was absent. Here, in the warm wooden kitchen, people cooked, sang softly to the radio, laughed, and shared old stories. No one competed, no one took charge, no one played dictator. I didn't have to fight for attention. Here, I was seen. At one point, Julia hugged me from behind, whispering, "Olivia, I have to say, you're glowing here like I've never seen." Her quiet words echoed loudly in me. Maybe it was true. I was living in my space, no longer confined to the capable but never enough daughter role. We worked until the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the vineyard golden. The house lights glowed, casting warmth onto the yard. I stood watching, seeing Sunset Vineyard House as a peaceful island in a dark sea. And I knew, I made this. But amid the joy, a flicker of unease passed through. I remembered Ethan, and my promise to Tom. Would this warmth hold when he arrived, or would it turn into the silent battlefield of old? I shook my head, pushing the thought away. Tonight, I wanted to fully savor this warmth before the bigger wave hit. Some moments, you know your life is about to take a new turn, even if you only hear a faint sound. For me, it was the slow crunch of tires on the gravel road leading to Sunset Vineyard House. A sound so ordinary, yet it made my heart pound like the whole house was trembling. I stood on the wooden steps, looking toward the gate. A black SUV stopped, the door opened, and Ethan stepped out. Same old Ethan, hurried, shirt half-buttoned, hair messy, eyes like he'd just woken up. Behind him, Tom and their kids, Lily, 8, and Ben, 6, hopped out, bouncing with energy. The air felt taut as a tightrope. I heard the wind through the vines, the clink of the car's glass door. Ethan looked at me. I looked back. Years of silent arguments, layered wounds, all condensed into those few seconds of silence. Then, unexpectedly, Lily shrieked, "Aunt Olivia!" She charged, wrapping her arms around my legs. Ben followed, his tiny arms circling my waist. I stumbled, then laughed, bending to hug them both. "You've grown so much," I said, voice shaky. "I missed you guys." Lily looked up, eyes sparkling, and asked innocently, "Auntie, why aren't Grandma and Grandpa here?" Her question pierced the tense air. Behind her, Ethan cleared his throat, Tom looked awkwardly at his shoes, and Julia, setting the table, froze. For a second, everything was still. I swallowed hard. Kids, they always voice what adults dodge. I gently ruffled Lily's hair, answering slowly, "Grandma and Grandpa have other plans, but we're still going to have an awesome Thanksgiving here, right?" Ben nodded eagerly, oblivious to the tension, seeing only a big house full of sweets and grown-up grape juice. Lily's question oddly melted the thin ice. Everyone moved inside. Julia swiftly helped Tom with luggage. Ruth pulled chairs for the kids to play a stacking game. Ethan, after a moment's hesitation, approached me. "The house. It's beautiful, Liv," he said softly, voice rough. "You've done what everyone dreams of." Hearing Liv, my childhood nickname, stirred something in me. Anger, hurt, it all shifted. But I didn't let myself soften. I gave a faint smile. "Thanks, things will be different here." He nodded, his eyes showing he understood. In the kitchen, the scent of apple tart wafted, Alex's jokes echoed. Julia adjusted the tablecloth, and Ruth glanced at me, nodding slightly as if to say, "You're doing it right." I realized Sunset Vineyard House was truly alive. Not just a refuge, but a battleground, where I was testing a new definition of family. That evening, as Lily and Ben chattered about school and Tom teased Julia about wine choices, I glanced at Ethan. He watched the scene quietly, lips curving into a faint smile. For the first time in years, I saw no challenge in his eyes, but a flicker of gratitude. Maybe those innocent kids had opened the first crack of light. The moment Ethan and his family stepped into Sunset Vineyard House didn't turn into the war I'd feared. Instead, thanks to a child's naive question, the air felt lighter, easier to breathe. But I knew this was just the start. The real storm would come when harder questions arose, not from kids, but from the adults. Some meals don't just feed the body, they tear open or heal wounds that have slept for years. The night before Thanksgiving at Sunset Vineyard House was one such meal, one I'll remember forever. The kitchen glowed with light, the scent of warm wood blending with baked apples and freshly opened wine. Julia arranged sparkling crystal glasses, Alex set out salad, Ruth poured wine leisurely, while Tom sliced bread with surprising care. The atmosphere was near perfect, but we all sensed a thin layer of tension hovering in the room. I chose a long oak table by the glass doors overlooking the vineyard. As everyone sat, candlelight reflected on their faces, making the scene feel like a secret ceremony. I sat across from Ethan. He was quiet, only smiling occasionally at the kids as they competed to share school stories. After the main course, a herb-roasted chicken instead of traditional turkey, I stood, leading everyone on a house tour. Every room was designed for warmth. Rough stone walls, an antique fireplace, bedrooms facing endless rows of vines. Julia gushed. Alex nodded in approval. Ruth murmured, "This is a space for healing." Back in the living room, Ethan and I lagged behind. He hesitated, hands in pockets, eyes on the wooden floor. Then he spoke. "Olivia, I know Mom and Dad favored me." I froze. Those words, I'd waited 33 years to hear them. Countless times I'd imagined Ethan admitting it, speaking fairness, but it never happened. "I'm sorry," he continued, voice catching, "for staying silent, for letting you carry everything. I knew. The tuition, the car at 16, the parties where every eye was on me. I stayed quiet because I benefited, and I was a coward." My chest tightened. Each word peeled away layers of ice around my heart. I'd prepared 1,000 sarcastic retorts for this day, but now, when it actually came, tears spilled out. I cried like a child finally vindicated. Years of bitterness, of being invisible, soothed in a moment by his confession. Unable to hold back, I rushed forward and hugged Ethan. He stiffened, then hugged me back, trembling as much as I was. He whispered in my ear, "I owe you standing by you, and from now on I will." In that moment, I realized maybe what I'd always craved wasn't just my parents' love, but alliance from the person who'd unwittingly pushed me aside. And now I had it. When we returned to the living room, my eyes were still red. Ruth glanced over, said nothing, just smiled as if she knew everything. Alex continued his hospital stories. Julia discussed kitchen lighting. No one pried, no one probed. They let us keep that moment to ourselves. That night, after clearing the table, I sat alone on the porch, watching the vineyard sink into darkness. Napa's night breeze was cold but gentle, like a soothing hand. I thought of Ethan's confession and felt an odd lightness. For the first time in years, I could breathe deeply without choking. But that lightness came with a worry. If Ethan could admit his part, would my parents ever do the same? Or would they stay locked in their delusion that everything was fair? The night before Thanksgiving, I received something unexpected. Acknowledgement and an apology from the brother who'd been the biggest shadow in my life. It didn't erase the past, but it opened a new door, one to real kinship. Some mornings, you wake knowing you're rewriting your own history. For me, that was the first Thanksgiving morning at Sunset Vineyard House. Soft golden sunlight poured through the windows, spilling across the wooden floor, carrying the aroma of freshly brewed coffee into the kitchen. No anxious dread like mornings at my parents' in Boston, where every kitchen sound came with a judging glance or a reminder. Here, I only heard the clink of spoons and forks mingling with lively laughter. I descended the stairs and found a scene I'd only seen in Happy Family commercials. Ruth gently directing like a conductor, Alex in an apron, fussing over the turkey like it was heart surgery, Julia rearranging table decor, changing her mind about napkin colors every few minutes, Tom, surprisingly, slicing vegetables like a pro chef, Ethan and the kids folding napkins into lopsided swan shapes. Everyone had a task. No one sat idle for being unneeded. No one was dismissed. No annoyed sighs. No tactless comparisons. I realized for the first time in years, I was truly enjoying the prep for Thanksgiving. I smirked to myself. Turns out, a perfect feast doesn't need my mom commanding every grain of salt. Just willingness, not orders. By noon, the long table was set with linens, candles, and sunflowers from the vineyard garden. Ruth pulled me onto the porch, resting a hand on my shoulder, her eyes glistening but serious. "Olivia, this is what Thanksgiving should be. Not lavish spreads or boasting achievements, but people working together, laughing, feeling they belong." I choked up. For years, I'd sought that feeling from my parents, from their stifling Boston home, and never found it. Now, right here in the house I chose, I saw it. In the kitchen, Julia called out, "Olivia, taste the sauce. Check if it's right." I stepped in, took a spoonful. The flavors balanced perfectly. Salty, sweet, creamy. I laughed. Perfect. Maybe the first time I've had good sauce without Mom's judgment. Laughter erupted. Even Ethan smiled, a relaxed grin unlike his tension yesterday. When the clock struck 3, the feast was ready. A golden turkey sat center table, surrounded by mashed potatoes, salad, apple tart, and Napa specialties we'd tried. Local wine, goat cheese, market truffles. We sat down. No kids' table like in Boston, no honorary seats for anyone. Everyone together, equal, gathered. I looked around, my heart swelling with indescribable gratitude. Ethan spoke first. "Thank you, sis, for opening not just the house but your heart." The air stilled, deep but warmer than ever. My eyes blurred, and for the first time in years, I didn't try to hold back. The kids raised their apple juice glasses. "Happy Thanksgiving!" The table joined, clinking glasses, a chorus of cheers, ringing like a triumphant hymn. Just then, Alex's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and passed it to me. The text read, "Mom calling." My body went cold. The warmth we'd woven was now at risk of unraveling with one call. I set the phone down, not ready to answer. The new Thanksgiving at Sunset Vineyard House had given me a sense of real family, where everyone contributed, was respected, had a place. But one phone ring from Boston was enough to tighten my heart. Some moments, a phone's ring echoes louder than any accusation. My iPhone, sitting quietly on the polished dining table, became a ticking time bomb. The first ring silenced the lively room. Every eye turned to me, as if one tap to answer could decide the fate of this feast. I looked at the screen. Mom calling. 3 short words, heavy with weight. I could picture my mother, Margaret, in Boston, biting her lip, squinting, hands trembling as she dialed. And of course, I saw my father, Richard, pacing, muttering something like, "That girl's lost it. Where's the whole family?" The phone stopped. The table exhaled, but less than a minute later, it rang again. This time, Dad calling. As if they were tag-teaming their anxiety, taking turns pushing me to the edge. I stayed silent. I lifted my wine glass, sipped, trying to keep my hand steady. In that moment, I caught Ethan's eye. My brother, once the unwitting beneficiary of favoritism, looked at me with rare empathy. Behind his gaze was a silent question. "What will you do?" I felt everyone, Ruth, Alex, Julia, Tom, the kids, holding their breath, waiting for my reaction. I realized this wasn't just my moment anymore. It was my chance to prove I could draw a clear line, no longer backing down from my parents' control. The phone stopped, then rang again. This time, not for me. Alex raised his phone, frowning. "Uncle Richard." Then Julia. Aunt Margaret texted asking, "Have you seen Ethan? Where's everyone?" Phones around the table buzzed, a chorus of worry and control from Boston. I looked around, watching the warmth from moments ago waver like a candle in the wind. I slammed my glass down, the sharp clink cutting through. "We eat first. This is our day." The words came out clean, unwavering, not asking permission. A command, but not my mother's domineering kind, a claim to my authority. The room went silent. Then Ruth smiled, raising her glass. To the host. A ripple of light laughter spread. Spoons and forks clinked again. The air returned to normal, but I knew. It was because they respected the boundary I'd set. Outside, the phone kept buzzing, but I let it be. Each ring was now just rain on the window. There, but no longer able to disrupt the feast inside. During the meal, the kids chattered. Lily looked up and asked, "Aunt Olivia, why aren't Grandma and Grandpa here?" Her innocent question was a small dagger to my heart. Ethan touched my shoulder as if to say, "I'll explain." But I shook my head. I looked into her clear eyes, giving the simplest truth. "Because they chose to be somewhere else. But we can still have fun together, right?" Lily nodded eagerly, returning to her pumpkin pie. I silently thanked kids' innocence. They voice what adults avoid, but accept answers without needing long justifications. After the meal, as some washed dishes, others played cards or stepped onto the porch, I stayed at the table. My phone glowed with missed calls and frantic texts. "Where's Ethan? Where are the kids? Why isn't anyone answering? Olivia, what are you doing?" Each message was a knock on memory's door. Times I was sidelined, holidays I became a shadow. But this time, the difference was I didn't feel small anymore. I felt free. I stood holding the phone, staring at the screen. Instead of the usual guilt, I whispered, "You wanted space? This is it." That Thanksgiving night, I did what I hadn't dared in 33 years. Set a boundary with my parents amid relentless phone rings. And strangely, when I didn't answer, the world didn't collapse. Instead, I felt stronger than ever. Some calls you wait for your whole life, but when they come, you don't know how to respond. After the feast, as the house still hummed with laughter, I stepped onto the porch. Napa's air was chilly, scented with grapes and fireplace smoke. In my hand, the screen lit up. Dad calling. I froze. All afternoon, I'd ignored dozens of his calls. But this one felt different, not urgent, not, "We need to talk now," but a lone call, as if he'd sat for hours before daring to dial. I swiped to answer. His voice came through, hoarse, lacking its usual authority. "Olivia, you there?" I took a long breath. "Yes, I'm here." A pause stretched. I heard his heavy breathing. Then he spoke in a tone I'd never heard. "I was scared you were too independent. Scared you didn't need us anymore. I convinced myself Ethan needed more, that you were always fine, but I was wrong." I stiffened. In that moment, memories flooded back. Me juggling 3 jobs to pay tuition, while Ethan was chauffeured in a new car. Me earning honors at graduation, only for them to leave early for Ethan's move. My promotion party turning into his wedding planning. All condensed into 3 words. I was wrong. I'm sorry, Olivia. His voice trembled. My heart sank when your mother sent that message. I thought you'd brush it off like always. But when I saw the whole family, our relatives, choosing to be with you, I understood. You don't need us to live, but you still wanted to be seen, acknowledged, and we failed you. Tears streamed down my face before I realized. For 33 years, I'd waited for any acknowledgement that I had value, that I wasn't just a shadow. And now, finally, it came. Dad, my voice broke. I didn't want you to be perfect. I just wanted to be valued like Ethan. To be asked about, not always, how's Ethan, how are the kids? I wanted to be seen as me. I heard a choked sob on the other end. Richard Miller, the man I thought never knew weakness, was crying. I understand, and I promise, from now on, I'll try to do better. I laughed through tears, a mix of pain and relief. After 33 years, at least I know you can say try. He chuckled, tired but sincere. In that moment, a part of my hardened heart softened. I wasn't naive enough to think a few apologies could erase decades of hurt. But at least I was acknowledged. At least I wasn't invisible to the man who always thought, the eldest daughter can manage. I turned, looking through the window at everyone inside. Ruth sharing old stories, Julia laughing hysterically, Alex pouring more wine, the kids chasing each other around the table. A new family, a new tradition, and now, maybe, a new hope for my old one. Before hanging up, my dad said something that stung my heart. Next year, can we come to Napa? I paused. Part of me wanted to shout, too late! But another whispered, this could be a chance. I answered softly, I'll think about it. He sighed, relieved, as if that was enough to let him sleep tonight. I hung up, sank into the porch chair, tears falling. Ethan appeared, placing a hand on my shoulder, saying nothing, just standing there, a silent promise I wasn't alone anymore. After 33 years, I finally heard my father admit his fears and mistakes. A late apology, but a start to healing. But would that admission be enough to change a family pattern set for decades? And if they came to Napa next year, was I ready to open the door? A year can do what 3 decades of silence cannot. I realized this on Thanksgiving morning, standing by Sunset Vineyard House's large window, looking out at vineyards glowing golden in late autumn. Napa's air was gentle, unlike Boston's tense chill I'd known. And today, the strangest thing was, my parents were here. Just a year ago, they were the center of family dinners where I was always pushed aside. Just a year ago, I got that brief message. This year's just with Ethan. Don't come. We need space. Yet today they sat in my living room, humble in a way I barely recognized. I walked into the kitchen, where Julia arranged apple tarts, Alex checked the turkey, and Ethan and Tom debated red versus white wine for the main course. The kids ran through the halls, their laughter ringing. The air was vibrant, free, and I smiled. This was the new tradition I'd dreamed of. My father, Richard, seemed a bit lost amid the laughter. He sat beside Mom, hands clasped like a student meeting the principal. I wasn't used to this. The man who once gave orders now quietly observed. Part of me felt satisfied. Part ached. When the clock struck 3, we gathered at the table. The long oak table shone under candlelight, the golden turkey fragrant, wine glasses glinting in the twilight. Everyone buzzed, picking seats, and no one asked, who's at the main table, who's at the side? Because here, every seat was main. I was about to start the meal when my father stood unexpectedly. He raised his glass, hands trembling, voice hoarse. Thank you. Thank you all for giving us a chance to be here. The table fell silent, he continued. Olivia, I know it wasn't easy to invite us. I thought you were too independent, that you didn't need anyone, but this past year I realized you just wanted to be seen, acknowledged. And today, in front of everyone, I want to say, thank you for giving us a chance to try again. I bit my lip hard. Hot tears welled up, and I couldn't hold them back. I laughed through sobs. Finally, after 33 years, you said what I needed to hear. Late, but just in time. Laughter erupted, applause mixed with clinking glasses. I saw Ethan's proud look, Ruth's subtle nod as if to say, "See, change is possible." The air lightened remarkably. We ate, laughed, shared old memories. But this time, no one was overlooked. When I talked about work, a new project signed, everyone listened. When Julia shared her latest design, people chimed in. When the kids performed a silly talking turkey skit, the table roared with laughter. I looked around, feeling the room complete. Not because everyone was here, but because everyone was present with sincerity. No more comparing glances, no subtle jabs, no invisible lines dividing important from lesser. In that moment, I realized tradition isn't carved on ancestral altars or doing it like always. True tradition begins when we choose to treat each other with respect. That night, Sunset Vineyard House became living proof of that. As the meal ended, we cleared the table together. My mother, Margaret, usually waited on, now awkwardly carried plates to the kitchen. I nearly laughed watching her vie with Julia to wash dishes. Maybe everyone was learning how to belong. As night fell, gathered around the fireplace, Ethan whispered to me, "You know, sis, for the first time, I feel Mom and Dad see us both equally. No more Ethan's priority Olivia can manage. It's liberating." I squeezed his hand. We sat silently, watching the flames as if to etch this moment into eternity. Before bed, I stepped onto the balcony. Moonlight bathed the vineyard, wind carrying scents of earth and wine. I looked at the sky and thought, this wasn't just a feast, it was a beginning. If someone asked what this journey brought me, I wouldn't answer with a number, an achievement, or a pretty photo of a wooden house in Napa Valley. I'd answer with a feeling, being seen. For 33 years, I lived as a supporting character in my own story. I worked hard, succeeded, earned a position many envied, but in my family, I was defined by two words: independent sister. All praise, all attention went to Ethan, the brother they said needed more. Me, because I could manage, was loved with neglect. That 9-word message, "Thanksgiving's just with Ethan's family, don't come," was the wake-up call. It showed me that if I kept living in their orbit, I'd always be a shadow. So I stepped out, bought Sunset Vineyard House, invited those who valued me, and most importantly, set boundaries with my own family. Looking back, this story isn't just mine. Maybe some of you watching recognize yourselves in it. Maybe you've heard, "You're so strong you can handle it." And while they thought it was praise, your heart heard it as dismissal. I share this not to fuel anger, but to say, we have the right to be seen. Not just for achievements, not just for enduring, but because we're human, with emotions, desires, and a need to be acknowledged, like anyone else. The most valuable lesson I've learned is to forgive but with boundaries. I chose to invite Ethan and his family to Napa, despite decades of wounds from favoritism. And something miraculous happened. In this new space, without my parents in the middle, Ethan admitted he knew he was favored, that he was sorry for staying silent. Those words were like rain washing away years of burden. Then when my father Richard called and said, "I was scared you were too independent, thought you didn't need us. But I was wrong," I cried. Not out of resentment, but because after 3 decades, I was acknowledged as someone who needed love. Sometimes a single acknowledgement can heal an entire childhood. That Thanksgiving became the start of a new tradition. A year later, my parents humbly stepped into my Napa home, helping prepare dishes, pour wine, and for the first time, I saw no main table or side table. Just family, laughing together. No one sidelined. Here's what I've learned. We have the right to set boundaries. Love doesn't mean accepting neglect. Forgiveness doesn't mean unconditional sacrifice. We can open our hearts, but keep our space. Acknowledgement matters more than material gifts. "I'm proud of you" outweighs years of silence. Traditions aren't fixed. We can rewrite them to nurture our souls. Family isn't just blood. True family is those who see you, listen, value you. If you're watching and see yourself in this story, know you're not alone. Many of us grew up feeling invisible. But you can choose change. Maybe you haven't bought a Napa farmhouse, but you can start by inviting the right people, clearing away oppressive tables, and creating your own tradition. however small. I know it's not easy to challenge a family system set for decades. But remember, change starts with one decision, the decision that you deserve to be seen. So I ask you, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Do you think it's time to create a new tradition? Maybe just a small dinner with those who truly understand and value you? Share your story in the comments. I read them all, and every experience deserves to be heard. If this story touched your heart, hit like, so I know it's not just my journey. If you want to follow more stories about family, healing, and human choices, subscribe to my channel. And if you know someone who needs this message, share the video. It might give them the courage to rewrite their own tradition. I'll close with a small reflection. Sometimes we seek happiness far away, work, money, achievements, but forget what we truly crave. A table where we can sit, no permission needed, no need to prove or compete, just welcomed. And when you find that table, whether in Napa, Boston, or anywhere, hold it tight. It's your real family. Thank you for taking the time to hear this story. I hope when you turn off the screen, you carry a belief. You deserve to be seen, acknowledged, and loved. And maybe from this moment, you'll start building your own new tradition.